teachers of Reddit, what is the most disrespectful thing a student has done or said? There was a fist fight in the cafeteria. And after the principal broke it up, the kid he was restraining screamed, "I'm glad your rich wife died on 9/11. Principal turned red and walked out. Student was expelled. When I was student teaching, a senior thought it would be funny to go rip the wig off of a teacher who was going through chemo at the time. What happened to that student? I really hope he got suspended or even expelled. That's beyond disrespectful. In fact, that's just ducking heartless. He actually got punched in the face by another teacher. Said other teacher was standing right there. And he did it out of reflex. Surprisingly, the teacher did not get in trouble. When I was in high school, there was this kid who was the class clown. But in a bad way. He was the jokester of the class. But he was also a bully. Never did any work. And distracted everyone. He was also very bright. My science teacher tried so hard to get through to him. He'd tell him he believed in him. Knew he had it in him to do well. But it never worked. The kid just laughed in his face every time he tried to help. At the end of high school, he'd flunked his exams so many times he wasn't even allowed to take it again unless he paid for it. My science teacher still believed in him. And said he knew he could pass it if he just tried one more time. And he even offered to pay. The kid accepted. Said he was disappointed in himself. He needed to pass to get into college and his mother would never afford it. He said he'd study this time and sit the test. Teacher paid. The kid didn't even show up for it, and afterwards I saw him laughing about how stupid the teacher was for giving him another chance. When I was a TA, I had the basketball team's starting center and point guard in my class in consecutive quarters. I failed them both, which made me public enemy number one for a time. The point guard was a pleasant enough guy, but every paper he turned in was clearly plagiarized. The prompt would be something like compare and contrast two hobbies, and he'd turn in some pristine essay about capital punishment. Every single time, I would give him a 0 and ask him to rewrite it. And he never did. The center, meanwhile, used disdain for me in the class. He technically failed by having too many absences, department policy. When he did attend, he'd show up late, slamming the door as though to announce himself. He'd read the newspaper while I lectured. And I don't mean it was subtly folded on his desk. He would hold the thing in front of him with two hands, like a dad in a comic strip, loudly turning pages. I told him to knock it off. He refused. I kicked him out of my class. And then I spent the next 2 weeks defending myself from nasty attacks from his parents and coaches. One of my co-workers was 80 years old. He married his high school sweetheart. Had 2 kids. Adopted 5 more. Lord knows how many grandkids. etc. They were in love. At lunch he would show us the lunch and love note she made that day. He always talked about her, the kids, and the grandkids. Every morning his wife dropped him and they would talk till the bell rings. He loved teaching and helping the students. He taught 9th grade health studies, a mandatory class, so all the students knew him. One day he drove to school by himself and we just knew. We didn't ask. He just told us she passed away on Saturday. We told our students and one kid said she was old anyways. Never wanted to hit a kid so much in my life. That was 3 years ago. He is still teaching. Not a teacher, but probably the most disrespectful thing I've ever witnessed in a classroom. One of my classmates was arguing with our teacher. They were going back and forth for a while. The teacher was visibly getting upset, turning red, etc. She ended up threatening to send the student to the principal, which coincidentally is the kid's dad. He looks her in the eye and says, "MRS. Teacher. I literally don't care what you say or what you tell me to do. I just don't care and I will not do it." Teacher backed down and started crying at her desk. Pretty awkward class the rest of the year. Edit, spelling. In the 6th grade my teacher took a leave because she had a miscarriage. A classmate said she hated her and was glad she lost her baby. When I was a senior in high school, I was in this physics class filled with the future staff of McDonald's. This one day we had a substitute teacher who might as well have walked directly out of a playbook. She just wanted to teach us, man. The future head fry cook of our class took such a liking to her. And such offense when she turned him down and tried to discipline the class, that he told her he'd rape her if given the chance, and then paraded across the top of all of our desks screaming vulgarity until she cried. We tried to stop him. We really did, but he was just such a piece of it. Not that it'd make things right. But the rest of the class and I managed to get him expelled for with our testimonies from that day. Another time when I was in high school, I saw some kids push a pregnant teacher down a flight of stairs. I never found out what happened to her. But those kids got expelled too. Not a teacher. But once a friend of mine got in a pretty heated argument about something stupid with the teacher in our world history class, and eventually he just got up, walked over to the front of the classroom, and necked the teacher, slapped the back of their neck as hard as he possibly could. He got suspended. I taught elementary school at a school for abused, neglected, and delinquent children the last 2 summers. It's special act. So it's serious business. One of my first grades only referred to me as this itch. Another student I had, 5th grade, wrote about a half a page of ways he was going to rape me. Older students would frequently hit teachers and staff. And cursing out was a common occurrence. One social worker was pushed down a flight of stairs and had bleach poured on her face. A pregnant teacher had a desk thrown at her, but that's more common than you'd think. Always fun at that school. I was a senior and was placed in a freshman computer class for some reason. Those freshmen didn't even care what the teacher had to say or anything he was trying to teach. Literally the whole class every day would just talk to each other or play games on the computer. One day the teacher broke down and started crying, saying no one respected the teacher, and then quit. Few years later I heard the teacher had passed away. I was the only one in the class that paid attention to what was being said and showed. The teacher clearly just loved teaching and wanted to teach. But no one gave a duck. Put his feet up on the trash can as I walked in front of him, purposefully tripping me in front of the whole class and breaking my nose. Administration refused to punish him, but I threw him out of my class and refused to allow him back since wouldn't apologize. Later that year, I was speaking to a very upset student in the hall during classes, and he was walking the halls. He had some sort of tiny but heavy metal bearings that he threw at us, hitting me and the girl in the head. He ran. Administration refused to chase him down or punish him again. Karma got him though. He made a derogatory comment one day about people with HIV. It was overheard by a student whose mother had HIV. He left school that day in an ambulance. Not a teacher. However, I took Russian for 4 years in high school. The teacher was a bit of a nut, but she was very sweet and an easy grader. Unfortunately, these 3 assholes, let's call them famine, pestilence and conquest, also caught on to the fact that she was an easy grader and decided to just make those 4 years difficult. They would derail every conversation. They would never participate in class. Constant yelling, playing with phones and just being dumbness all year. At the end of freshman year, they were constantly asking dumb questions. Like, what does something we learned months ago mean, over and over again? Finally, this one super quiet kid turns and screams, "It means shut the duck up." Dead silence. After about a solid 15 seconds the teacher just went back to teaching. It was amazing. When I was in like 10th grade, I thought it was funny if I hid in a closet that was in a classroom at the beginning of the lesson. So I went in there, and when the teacher came into the room, started his lesson and asked where I was, I realized that no one had seen me go into the closet and that I told no one about my funny plan. So I sat there for like half an hour thinking about if I should go out or just stay in the closet for the entire lesson. Somehow I then got the idea that it would be cool to peek out with my head and just go to my table when the teacher was not looking. Unfortunately, just then he was looking right at the closet and saw me peek out. I can only imagine what his thoughts were, but needless to say he didn't think it was very funny and brought me to the principal immediately after that. I'm a middle school science teacher. One of my students brings up my husband whenever I try to get him to do any work or shut the hell up. I just ignore it and move on. But it actually does bother me. It's not explicitly sexual since there are no bad words. But this kid is definitely thinking about it that way. For example, I was telling him to stop some random bullet and he goes, "If I was husband name, how would you punish me?" I just walked away. I'm documenting the out of this, but I DK what to do because I feel I'm being too sensitive. Whenever we call this kid's parents, we get an angry rant and complaints to the principals. Our principals are great and support us, but it's not worth calling most of the time. It's this kid's second time in this grade and he's not passing anything. Not a teacher, but when I was in high school I had this little Asian lady as a teacher. She used to give out candy for doing well in class. She also kept all her stuff on a little cart that she rolled from class to class. One day one of the jocks decides to steal the cart and the teacher was helpless as he was easy double her size. She cried. You know he did a bad thing when his jock buddies didn't even think it was funny. Male classmate told our female teacher he wanted to do it with her during sex education. Are you telling me you aren't going to cooperate? No. I'm telling you to suck my balls. Everyone in the vicinity ding unison. It was hilarious.